Roger's left his, how many billions of dollars worth of metal is that?
3.7.
3.7. He's left it, and I don't know how many places. So we were having lunch, and he left it, and I held it for him, and apparently I actually had it analyzed, and I'm producing it in China. So I just want to let you know that. One of the things that Roger brought up is this idea of protection. I think you said brand protection. And one of the things I'm kind of curious as to is there's also this idea of intellectual property. And you have, both of you, Lisa and Roger, have microphones there, and we have time for a couple questions, so I decided I was going to ask them. So just from the standpoint of protecting, how do you do that in an environment where there's so many people trying to, make knockoffs? You look at Under Armour, for example, as one. I go to China. There's this idea of Apple versus Samsung and their intellectual property. You have your metal and all the development costs that went into that and all its potential. How do companies protect themselves?
To make sure this is on. Oh, yeah. Well, with regard to I'll hold this instead. With regard to, say, our consumer products for collectible brands, the point of import, having an excellent relationship with the imports manager in Savannah, we're able to detect when people knock off our product. We're able to detect when people are bringing illegal variations of our product into the country to compete with us at a lower cost. In fact, we'll go buy product from their catalog that is ours or is illegal, ship that product to the head of the U.S. Port Authority and have them shut down immediately for 90 days. So we're pretty vicious about things like that. Another thing is having a delineation between offshore activities and onshore activities, which has a single point of detection. With this metal, we know that it will be knocked off in foreign countries. There's no question about it. If we bring a patent into China, we've got to hand China enough information, which is called an enabling disclosure. By giving them an enabling disclosure, we're telling the companies how to do this. But what we have at U.S. Imports is an excellent relationship that we're building with the port authorities and a single point of detection. If I fire an X-ray laser into this, it scatters off a thing called a Miller indice, and that Miller indice is like a little barcode signature. And if it shows up reflecting on the wall as our signature or our fingerprint of this metal, then that import is illegal. And all I've got to do is find one, and I get an immediate 90-day moratorium on imports for that importer, and then successive action thereafter. So understanding from a value chain perspective, many times we talk about that single point of accountability, that crux point, or what I used to say, the right point to strike the log when you're splitting wood in the backyard. There's this just one point where if you hit the axe on that log, it will split all the way through. The same thing with activities offshore and onshore. There's a right point at which you can split economic activity to offshore those activities, detect your single point of accountability, and then onshore your wealth building activities.
Just a follow-up question on that. I think you talked about value chain, and what you presented was, I think, logical. And you said when it came to your head, it crystallized. What's the biggest barriers you have in communicating this to management? Because it seemed like it's relatively common sense.
Yeah, I presented the value channel argument to, I had a count in my head at one time, it's something like 80 companies. And I've only had one company, one CEO say, no, that doesn't make any sense. Only one. But on the flip side, I've only had probably 15 say, yes, let's get that going now. So the biggest obstacle is that there are too many fish to fry, especially from a compliance standpoint. If you look at Sarbanes-Oxley, was obviously something touted all through the early 2000s. External reporting, valuation, tax compliance. The financial organization is seen as an IT activity and a financial activity. And what I try and tell CEOs is that neither one of those entities knows how to do this, because to execute the cost allocations, you have to understand the business that you're trying to conduct. Cost allocations out of your vertical P&Ls into a horizontal accounting framework. You've got to understand what's going on with your business. And then typically, this is not a software application. Yes, it goes into business objects or ClickView or Hyperion or OBIE, any of those types of BI packages. But this is not an IT initiative. If you hand this to IT, it will crash and burn. If you hand this to finance, science, you will get 1990s activity-based costing. Neither of those will work. It has to be a cross-functional strategic group, and they've got to understand the goals of the business at hand. Most companies don't have that entity, and that's the biggest obstacle.
Okay. Lisa, you brought up, I think, opportunities, and some of the opportunities that exist, I think, in the U.S. economy are housing, energy, and that there has been a shift to manufacturing. I think some U.S. companies have actually hedged increased costs in China. I think from what I've read is the last 3 years, China's wages have increased on average about 19%. And what they hope to do is have a self-sustaining economy. So if you look at the potential for growth and innovation in those areas, is that realistic? Is something that may come to the rescue, I think, for kind of the issues and problems that you discussed?
I think that they're all potentially strong areas. I'm not sure if can you hear me now? Okay. I think one of the key things that we're going to need to look at going forward too is that consumption is almost 70% of the U.S. economy. And so as a result, we maybe need to rebalance that. We have other industries that are having a greater contribution. I think we're starting to see that transition take place. As everyone knows, consumers became very heavily leveraged, and balance sheets were really, just completely wrung out, and of course value was taken out of everyone's homes. Now we're starting to see that being repaired, but there's still a lot more work to go. And there's the other issue again of baby boomers needing to retire, and what they had hoped to retire on, whether it was the value of their home, the value of their pension, maybe a lot less. And so consumption is actually changing. We're looking at things changing. And actually Roger's point to the fact that we're destroying wealth in our economy. And so as a result, people simply have less to spend. And so I think the more that we're able to make this kind of shift into broader industries, attract again our manufacturers to come home, and it's being helped overseas because indeed their wages are rising. And so we're seeing an increase in the value of the Chinese currency, and so that costs them out. The Chinese themselves are demanding higher wages and higher standards of living, and that is really creating some new rebalancing. Having said that, again, as you've pointed out, a lot of manufacturers were really going to the lowest cost place, and so it's a race to the bottom. And I think we're now starting to, re-look at that, because those costs might be really cheap to go in, whether it's China, India, places in Africa, other places in Asia, but when you're there for a while, in fact, the costs rise. And then the cost of shipping goods over, reliability, all these kinds of other factors make a difference. And I think that these are, for the longer term, all promising areas.
Thank you. I think the topics are just fascinating. I know that I joined Roger at lunch, and I think we have a lunch coming up. And Lisa was very gracious again to fight her way here. But we've gone over time, as Howard pointed out. Sometimes we manage our way over. Congratulated, I think, Bill Tracy about going over. I assume I'm going to get the same congratulation for going over my time. I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm going to invite both of you to come talk to my classes. So, it's not sunny Orlando, but hopefully sunny Southern California would be a nice invite for you guys.